Okay, so it was March Madness, like 2017, when I coined this phrase. I was super proud of it. I was so obsessed with this tournament because every single game comes down to like just a few points. Anybody could win, anybody could lose, you never know, and it was so thrilling. So I was addicted. I tried to predict the outcome of games, like based on how it was going, how the teams looked, regardless of what I put in my bracket, which was kind of disappointing sometimes. But I love a good comeback story. Who doesn't? So if I saw the team losing, but they were making their free throws, I was like, this team's gonna come back and win. So that's what I always predicted, regardless. So people assume that knocking down threes and having the big guys down low, dunking, that's what's gonna win the game, right? But you don't really take single point free throws into consideration. But the NCAA actually did a study, and they took all their teams since like 2001, and looked at the performance and came to a conclusion about the likelihood of their wins and losses. And actually, it wasn't the percentage of three-pointers they made or two-point field goals, it was the percentage of free throws that impacted the outcome of the game. So how many free throws the team shot and how many of those free throws they made impacted the end. So they found that when evenly matched, so pretty competitive teams were up against each other, the higher the free throw percentage won almost 80% of the game, so that's totally crazy. So basketball games, especially March Madness, come down to the very last second. So every single point matters. But enough about basketball. Free throws win games means a lot more than that. So I kind of made this my life motto, because to me it means the little things in life matter. So one little thing that completely changed the trajectory of my life was an email. It took me 5 tries to get into med school. I applied 5 times in a row. I pretty much just refused to give up. Wasn't going to do that. To make a long story short, the first 4 years were pretty much a series of interviews, wait lists, and then nothing, rejection. The last round seemed like it was going down that same route, so a little disappointing. I got a few interviews from allopathic schools, but not a single one from a DO school. Then I got an email. So the director of admissions at PyCom had sent, I guess, like a generalized email to prospective med students promoting the school, gave like reminders about application deadlines and things like that. But I was losing hope, so I thought maybe I'll apply to one more school and see what happens. So the same pattern followed: interview, waitlist, and so on. But when I interviewed at PyCom, it felt different. I didn't feel like a number like I felt at every other interview. I felt like a person. So I remember leaving Pikeville. I had like a 6-hour drive back to South Carolina, and I got like really emotional. I just had this feeling in my gut, like something was different. Like I felt like this is where I was going to end up. So I vividly remember one day at work, I was a technician for Columbia Eye Clinic, super fun. It was COVID season, so I had to work the door and like check temperatures, ask about COVID symptoms, travel, all that good stuff. And not many patients were showing up, so I had my iPad up there to study. I was in grad school at the time. And I got one of my final rejection emails that morning. It was one of my last schools, so I thought, this is gonna be it for me, I'm not gonna be a doctor. Then an hour later, I heard from PyCom. So a seemingly hopeless day turned into one of the best days of my life. My dream finally became a reality. So if it weren't for that email, I wouldn't be a doctor. That was my last year applying. Wouldn't have gone again after that. So if it weren't for the one email that this medical school admissions director sent, I would not be standing here today in your presence of all the student leaders from all over the country. So I wouldn't be living my dream. So if you're ever inclined to say something, send an email, ask a question, do it, because it could have a massive ripple effect. This Valentine's Day was really, really rough for me. Honestly, it couldn't have gone much worse. So I know a lot of you in the audience can relate to the anxiety, depression that sometimes escalates when you're in med school. So you understand how the bad days can be. And winter, for me, it doesn't really make things any better. So on top of that, we were preparing for probably one of the most difficult blocks we had in med school. My personal life was falling apart, and a bunch of bad things happened in my life all at the same time, as that tends to happen. And all these events leading up to this day broke me, like almost destroyed me. So I was doing some board questions at school with some girls in my class. Really couldn't focus on anything and just wanted to be alone. Really wasn't feeling it that day, so I left. Later that evening, I got a text from one of the girls asking if I was home and if she could stop by for a few minutes. She's a type 1 diabetic just like me, so I kind of figured it was something to do with that. Anyways, I get a knock on my door like 30-ish minutes later, and 2 of the girls from this study group showed up with a bouquet of flowers and chocolate. One of the girls said, "No one should be alone on Valentine's Day, and we wanted to remind you that you're not alone. You have us." So after they left, I closed my front door and literally collapsed on the floor in tears. It was such a simple gesture that made a huge impact on me. They had no idea what I was going through at the time, but their little gesture made a huge difference. George Washington Carver once said, "Do common things in an uncommon way." And to me, this was doing a common thing, just checking in on a friend in an uncommon way. So I want to leave y'all with one of my favorite quotes by Pat Summitt. If you don't know her, she was the head coach of the Tennessee Lady Vols for like almost 40 years. But she passed away fairly recently from Alzheimer's disease in 2016. But she said, "Individual success is a myth. No one succeeds by herself." So this is just a good reminder that we didn't get here on our own. There were people who came in and out of our lives at specific times in our path to med school that helped us get here. Whether they offered support, inspiration, advice, we grew into the student doctors we are now because of the people and experiences that came before us. Little things that we may not have even noticed shaped us along the way. So remind yourself of that in the future whenever you can. And don't forget that free throws win games.